Good, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Community of Inquiry Workshop. I suspect I have many history colleagues joining me today as we're going to be talking about how to apply the Community of Inquiry framework to online history courses. My name is Katie Walsh, and I'm very happy to have you here. Before we begin, I just want to give you some reminders. So this is the time to turn off all distractions. So turn off your cell phone, your email, Facebook, all those things that tend to distract us. If you're in an office, close your door, and really just hope to devote the next 10 to 15 minutes to our workshop. Also, this is a time to tune in. I've already done an audio check for my mic to make sure that everything is working on my volume level, but now is the time where you can do that as well. So if you go up to Tools, and then Audio Setup Wizard, just to make sure that you have the right volume for our workshop. All right, lastly, free your mind. So if you have, I know we all have a lot running through our heads of things we need to do, just try to push that off for the next 10 to 15 minutes and really devote your mind, attention, and energy to our workshop and the Community of Inquiry framework. So let's get started. Our big question here is how can we make online history courses more interactive using the Community of Inquiry framework here? And you know, this is something we as historians, we face in a face-to-face classroom as well, but today we're going to focus specifically on the Community of Inquiry framework. History isn't necessarily known as one of the more interactive fields. It's often been portrayed as rather boring and dull. This is one portrayal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, famously the anyone history teacher.
At Chili's, fresh is now. And now, 2 Texas icons and 1 delicious dinner. New Dr. Pepper baby back ribs, smoked in-house on Chili's $20 dinner for 2. Fresh is happening now.
In 1930, the Republican-controlled House of Representatives, in an effort to alleviate the effects of the, anyone? The Great Depression, passed the, anyone? The tariff bill, the Hawley-Smoot Tariff Act, which anyone raised or
All right,
lowered?
I think you kind of get the picture there. We've seen those faces in classrooms before. You can't see your students' faces necessarily on an online format, but they may still exist. So we want to develop ways to make the online classroom more interactive and more than just saying anyone. All right, so let's get started. So first I want to have an activity where we really brainstorm the challenges of online history courses. So I want you to pause the recording once I've given you the instructions, pause the recording and write down 5 challenges or barriers to student interaction in online history courses. Now, some of these may also work for face-to-face classroom, but I really want you to think about unique challenges to online history classes in terms of student interaction. So go ahead and pause the recording, and then once you have written down your 5, you can resume. Welcome back. So you have your 5 challenges or barriers that are there. Keep those close at hand because we're going to reference those again after we look at the Community of Inquiry framework. So let's begin. What is the Community of Inquiry framework? There are 3 main components to it, and those 3 are the social presence, the cognitive presence, and the teaching presence. Now, the entire framework, the Community of Inquiry framework, is something, an idea that was developed and has been continuing to be researched by Randy Garrison, and I will include a reference to his work at the end of the workshop. So let's begin with social presence. So we think that's probably pretty difficult to facilitate in an online situation, maybe less so in face-to-face. But there are definitely ways, and we'll think about those a little bit later, about how to facilitate social interaction in online courses. But it's crucial here to understand what we mean by social presence. and it's about forming a community of friendly and discerning individuals. It's not about making friends. So we want students to make friends in the class. That's great, but really what we want them to do is to understand that everybody's sort of in this together. Learning can be a very vulnerable process, and so we want students to feel comfortable sharing their ideas, and we also want students to feel comfortable, probing other ideas, asking critical questions, asking students to revise or rethink what they're saying. So we want to develop really a community here where students aren't feeling attacked or defensive, but recognizing that everybody in the group is working towards the same goal. So we want to make sure you have a clear sense of what social presence is. So just quickly, and again, if you need to pause the recording to do this, go right ahead. Just write down 3 key words that are associated with social presence. That is the first key component of the community of inquiry. The next component is cognitive presence. And the cognitive presence here, we actually rely on the practical inquiry model to practice and to assess the cognitive presence in online courses. This one's rather involved, so take notes as we're going along, and again, there'll be another self-assessment at the end. So step 1, there are 4 main steps to the practical inquiry model. The first one is the triggering or the hook and hold. And this is where you want to get students interested in your topic. There's a lot of ways that you can do this, so think of an activity that will really get your students interested. Maybe, connect it to something that's in pop culture or in the news today, or why is this relevant to them? Maybe ask them to make it relevant to their lives. Think of a way that you can get them interested in the topic of study. Then you're going to give them the tools. This is the step 2, the exploration phase. You're going to give them the tools or the information that they need to begin their inquiry. So this is going to be where you share some information. So typically we as historians, this might be where we give important historical context perhaps for understanding a primary source document or something along those lines. But you're equipping your students here for the inquiry that they are about to conduct. At step 3, the integration phase is where they are going to begin their inquiry and asking students to integrate material. So again, in history, this might be where we traditionally ask students to integrate the context, the historical context, with the primary source document that we've given them, or you may ask them to connect it to other things that you've talked about in class, but you want them to connect this new material to different ideas, different thoughts that they have, so as to deepen their understanding of the new material that they're presenting. So integrating ideas, thinking about the material in new and different ways. And then finally, the last step is the resolution step, and this is where you want students to put their thoughts together into a coherent and credible solution. So again, in history classes, this might be where we ask students to formulate an opinion about a document or make some sort of statement about the author's opinion. They may need to test their solution, in which case, so for history, they may need to provide evidence of their opinion or of their thesis. But this is really where you want to bring it all together, where you want to have the students come to a resolution and then a way to test out this new idea that they have. So again, let's go back. This is the second component of the community of inquiry framework, the cognitive presence. So just go back and make sure you have a firm understanding and list the 4 steps of the practical inquiry model. Again, if you need to pause the recording, feel free. The last and final step is the teaching presence. This is the last component in the community of inquiry process. And this is a very important one. This is important in a face-to-face classroom as well as in an online setting. And the type of presence that you provide here, you want to provide students with enough guidance to facilitate learning, but not tell them how or what to learn. So you want the questions to really be coming from the students. You want the exploration of the topic, the integration of ideas to be coming from the students. This is difficult. A lot of times our students come into classes and just want to know what the answer is. But that's not the kind of teaching presence that you want to exhibit here. You want to give them direction, certainly from the beginning, so in your course design, the activities that you develop, and then as you're going along too, providing directional cues, providing organizational cues to let them know, how to proceed with their inquiry, but again, without being too overbearing. This one I thought would do something a little different for the self-assessment and think of something fun. Think of an instructor that you have had who embodies the teaching presence I just described. And think about the ways that he or she embodied this presence. And this might be something that you consider in adopting in your own classroom. Again, if you need to, just go ahead and pause the recording and then rejoin us once you have conjured up that image of your instructor. All right, now that we have gone through and explained, we have an understanding of the community of inquiry framework, let's put this together. Let's think about how we can apply this to online history courses. So if you'll take back out the sheet that you had with the 5 challenges, I want you to consider ways that the community of inquiry framework seeks to address those challenges. So just go down the list point by point, and I want you to think about how either the social presence, the cognitive presence, or a teaching presence could aim or could seek to address those challenges. You'll definitely need to pause the recording for this one. So you'll go ahead and pause the recording and then really give this a lot of thought. This is where we're integrating the knowledge and trying to really do the application process of the cognitive or the community of inquiry framework. All right, welcome back. I thought I would just share one example from my list. So one of my potential barriers or challenges to online history courses was students feeling isolated. So in a classroom, I do a lot of group work. I often have students get together in groups to work through primary sources. But when they're working alone from a computer, they can't do that. So I had listed that the social component or getting students to interact with each other was a challenge. But just to give you one example of the way that we might overcome that, so this really gets to the social presence of the community of inquiry framework. But on an online history class, we might, if it's a synchronous online course, you can build breakout groups into the actual, and if you take a look on the screen, I have 4, and we don't have a live audience, so I can't put people in those rooms, but I do have 4 breakout rooms that are here, and it would be possible, if this was a synchronous online history course, to have students go to those rooms and work in groups just like they do in our face-to-face classroom. So this is one way that we can sort of overcome and build that social presence into an online history course. So lastly, and this requires a fair amount, so you definitely will need to pause your recording and think about this. And it's going to be different for every one of you, depending upon what courses you teach and what you do in your courses. But I want you to develop an activity for an online history course that demonstrates the cognitive presence by using the practical inquiry model. So you'll need to go through those 4 steps. Again, triggering phase, the exploration phase, the integration phase, and then the resolution phase. But I mean, this might be something that you try in your face-to-face classroom as well, if you're not currently teaching an online history course. But develop one activity that you think might be able to emphasize or to illustrate this cognitive presence in your classroom. So go ahead and pause, and then we'll regroup at the end for a wrap-up. All right, so hopefully you now have a sense of how you might be able to apply the community of inquiry framework to online history course, maybe even to your traditional face-to-face classroom as well. I do want to let you know that you're more than welcome to contact me with any questions. I've given you my email here. You're also welcome to stop by my office in Millette 358, and I'd be more than willing to talk more about this with you. And also just, why don't you bring by your the activities that you wrote down during the workshop today? Because I'd love to see the activity that you developed for the cognitive presence in your classroom. I think that would be really neat to see what everybody came up with. And then my last slide, this is really the primary source, the base for my presentation today. So if you're interested in checking out more about the community of inquiry model, I would see Randy Garrison's book. All right, that is all that I have. Thank you so much for joining me, and happy teaching. Bye.